Okay, so in our project, right, so we're doing a kind of a mock trial of Sweetbird here. I want to go back to level 4. Right, so level 4, we were doing our spaces. So initially, to start out, to make a room or to do anything with rooms, I need to actually define that category. Just because I have a series of walls doesn't mean that boundary condition has been defined. The data exists and it's waiting for you to tell it to establish that data criterion. However, you really need to do something with it to get it. So to do so, I go to the architecture ribbon, and everything is loaded right here in between room and area. Now the difference between a room and an area, they both calculate the same thing. They both can have colored plans on them. Now the area plans are more like your AutoCAD area. It's going to allow you to do your BOMA calcs. So in BOMA calcs, you're going to have dependent walls, exterior walls. Those are going to define whether or not you're doing your area calculation based on the center line of the wall, or you're doing the finished face of the wall, so on and so forth. People make a living doing BOMA calcs. So you can, with a room, it's really only reading the finished wall faces, right? And if I'm going to do any type of interior design, I can start pushing in data based on that room tag. So if I'm going to do a finished plan, right? Within that finished plan, I'm going to have a finished schedule. And within that finished schedule, it's going to be tied to the room. And that's why the room is really pulling the interior side of that. If I'm doing any type of major just area straight calculation, I want to use an area plan. And then it's kind of like the straight, tedious polyline I'm manually drawing every single line. And that's more so because you are analyzing the layout of every single line and getting that right to begin with. So let's go ahead and just begin with rooms, and then we'll kind of bleed off into areas, because areas are so similar that rooms cover majority of what we need to know about areas at the head of it. So to place a room, I simply click on the room button under the architecture ribbon, or I type RM. If we watch the graphic, brings that up. And you'll see that as I bring the room in, it's beginning to track where walls are. Now, if I try and place a room out here, right, there's nothing for it to track. There's no boundary condition for it, right? So I'm going to click out there first, and it says none of the elements are visible in floor plan level 4. And that's because we've cropped our view. That's why that's not visible. But that's okay. So I'll bring that back where I can see it. So you'll see it starts to peek its head around. Now, just because I have a floor, right? So now I'm hovering over the floor. Just because I have a floor element there doesn't mean that I'm allowed to track that room. It's not until I have a fully enclosed boundary. And you'll see even here, right? Even though I don't have a closed boundary here, because it knows a little bit that wall's supposed to be going all the way through, it's going to track that, it's going to read it, and it's going to place that room. I can go ahead and click around. Now you may be wondering what those reference lines are. There's a reason for those, because there's really no easy way to begin grabbing the room. So I'm just going to click around, drag around, and we'll fill it in as we go. Click on anything I got here. It's fine. Okay. So then if I escape out, I do a double escape, I'm left with my room tag. So when I want to move the room tag around, so you'll see here is as I hover over it, I'm going to click, and once I hover over those, we call them room reference lines. Once I hover over that, I'm able to then grab that room. So right, it's a filling space, right? It's filling a space around me. Typically, when I'm doing any type of room editing or placing rooms, I want to turn those reference lines on so I can see them. So immediately, anything to do with views is either going to be under the view ribbon, or for that specific view only, I'm going to go to visibility graphics, and it's going to be under annotation categories. Now remember, what did we place? We placed a view template on this. So our view template right now is driving this view. So we need to remove the view template in order to change that. So I'm going to come into the properties of the view, and under the properties of the view, I'm going to deselect my view template and turn it to none, so I can make edits again. Apply, click OK. So now when I go back to visibility graphics, which is VB on the keyboard, go to annotation categories. Within annotation categories, I should see a room tags. So room tags are there. Now, you would think that it's an annotative element, but it's really not. It's under the model categories. A lot of the rooms I think are misplaced, which is why I go here first. The only thing that's handled as an annotation element with the rooms is found under the room tags section. Anything else to deal with the room is going to be under the model categories. Now, two other things that appear within rooms are going to be your boundary lines, your reference lines, and then also your color fills, interior fills, and then your reference. So there's our reference line. So that's what we want. So I click apply on reference line, and I'm able to see now my reference line. So if I want to quickly grab a room, I know exactly where to click, right? If I click on the tag, it's not going to click the whole room. When I click the tag, it's now selecting the boundary of the room. And a lot of times you get yourself into trouble with this because you'll inadvertently double click and then you'll open up the family of the tag, and we don't want to do that. So anytime I want to do anything dealing with the room itself, which is the boundary condition of those 4 walls, or 6, or whatever they may be, I'm going to select the reference lines. I go to VB on the keyboard again. One other place that items live, and that's the room bounding lines. So I want to see the boundary lines, and that lives under lines. So it's kind of wonky, I think, that it's in 3 spaces. I wish they would say, here's rooms, here's all the stuff that deals with rooms.
What was the other category besides lines?
I have
model category. Okay.
Yep, under the model, correct.
Lines or
Rooms. There. And then also under lines. So under lines, I need to find all the way down, there's a room separation line. So I need to make sure that those are on as well. And I'm going to go ahead and override my line style, and I'm going to turn those red. Give it a thicker line weight so I can see them, and solid for the line pattern. Click apply. Right, and you'll notice that it doesn't give me my boundary, right? It's only when I draw a room separator. So within the name room separator, that immediately clues me into something. It says that I can separate a room. So let's say that this is a conference space, right? It's not a bedroom, it's not anything. We don't really know what it is because we haven't defined it. When I go to my room separator, so below room is a room separator. I'm going to click on the room separator, and when I draw that line, it's going to allow me to draw a line. And in my case, it's showing up as red because I want to see it. By default, this is not turned on, and you can't see it, so you don't know where you're placing them. And it gets people into trouble too, because a lot of times these are kind of one-offs, right? You might accidentally attach the room separation line to a baseboard that's visible in the room, right? And that's an 1/8 inch off the wall. If you're doing that as a finish, it's going to calculate that 1/8 inch, and it's going to throw your area calcs off. It's going to in turn throw off leasable space, which in turn throws off how much money you're charging. So you want to make sure you get the best bang for your buck, right? Then if I select my room, actual room reference line, you'll see that room separator line has divided that room in half. Even though there's no wall, I've told Revit to have a room separator line.
If you have a wall with an opening, a rough opening in it, does the room separator or does the room tag automatically detect that as a separate space, or does it count it as a?
So in the case of a rough opening, so I have a wall, I'm going to place an opening here.
Yeah, sure.
Does it read that? Yes, it does. Because it's a full wall. If we had done like the CAD when we're picking lines for the walls, and in CAD, I was saying, hey, there's watch out around doors, because in CAD you're going to draft that as there's a break in that wall. In Revit, you want to draw in the full wall and then plop the door in. And that's because Revit will still read that, right? It's going to read that opening. And to prove it to you, room separator and opening in the wall, I click on room. So I guess it does it. Now, if I look though, right, because I put the wall opening, right, it's reading that full opening. It could be that the height of that opening is too big. So right now I have a top offset of negative 4'9". We'll do a 0 foot on that.
0 foot means it would be.
Unconnected height up to level 4, basic straight level 5. Yeah, so it's not reading a header in that case. But if I place a door, if I come to a room that has a door in it,
So in that case, you would put an area separator, room separator line.
you got it. Now, exactly. So, and there's another kind of one-off. I didn't want to get to it yet. Yeah, it doesn't have it there. Yeah, so you would have to come in with the rough opening, right, and choose where I want to take it. And I can see why it doesn't do that, and that's because of where do I want to take that area. So the minute I do that, I'm taking that area. In the case of a door, right, a door is really dependent on the wall. So I've placed one where a door has it. It's actually encapsulating that boundary, right? Yeah. That is a good question. Very good question. Right, yeah, because there might be cases where I actually want to calculate that. And that's kind of like the bleed over, the gray area between the room and the area, right? Now, some other things happening with this. So when I can delete off the tag, right? So I'm going to say that I want to say room name, no number, blah. I have all kinds of SGA defined ways of tagging the room. In this case, if I go ahead and just delete that off, right? All of a sudden I don't have, the room is not there, or is it there, right? If I tag it, right, I've deleted it. So if I select the reference line, right, there's going to be no room there. And if I delete that, there's no room. It says room was deleted from all model views but still remains in the project. So basically what happens is it still reads that as a room. So it's, in some ways it's a little bit of a glitch, in other ways it's not a glitch. In some ways it's going to help you, other times it's not going to help you. There's really no clear way of describing why it does that. So if I need to bring the room back, I've deleted it. Now I'm going to double up on room. So the only way to remove that is really from a schedule. And we haven't got to schedules yet. We'll get to that a little bit later. So we'll come in and find those views that we deleted, and we'll remove them. Okay. If I take off the tag, right? So if I come in, select the tag, and say delete tag, I can delete off that tag. And that's another way of doing it. So now I know that there's a room, but I don't see the tag. So the tag is tied to it, but it also has the ability to remove it or not remove it. So even though I select that, now because I don't have a tag, I can't do anything with the room. I can just start defining criteria. There's no way to really display that. If I need to bring the tag back, I can tag room, and then it brings that back. Let's say in the case that I have several rooms that have had them deleted. Right, so I have 3 rooms in there that don't have anything with them. If I also look at the tag room, I go to tag all not tagged. And within this, and this is leading into tomorrow's lesson about tagging, right? I can tag all kinds of things. So I'm going to tag all room tags that are not tagged currently with an SGA room tag, this one, and this one. So I want to know which one I want. And I'm going to click apply, and then you'll see that the ones over here that were not tagged, it'll just go automatically tag all the untagged ones. So in the case of even like doors, say, and this is kind of leading in, let's say I want to tag all of my doors, right? I'm not going to explicitly draw the door tag into my door family. I'm just going to apply, and then it should tag all of my doors as well. So you'll see now I have my door tags in there, okay? So that's kind of how the little intro to tagging works. Room tags work the same way. Now the tag itself is housing a specific set of data, right? And if I look at different types of that tag, so the room doesn't necessarily generate a tag. It'll generate the tag initially, but the tag is more so a reading of data. It's not driving the data, right? The room is pumping data into that tag. So I can select, right, one that has square footage and volume calculated. All those are textual labels that are reading other information. And we'll get into making our own tag tomorrow that does this, where we can read anything. Title blocks are the same way, reading project information. It's something that's reporting a value back to me from existing database structures, okay? And you can see that I can have one room reading different than the other room. Now, placing the tag, right? So if I if I look at this tag, right, I can move the tag, right? So if I click and drag, I can move that tag off, right? It's still connected to this room, but it's outside of the scope of that center point. And I can take that center point, I can also move that center point. Now all that's doing, it's more so for ease of the user to grab it. It has nothing to do with the way the room's being calculated or anything else, okay? If I delete the tag on the room and then I re-tag that room, right, I can tag that anywhere I want and it's going to be connected to it. Or if I come in and delete it and I use the tag all not tagged and I go back down to rooms, it's going to put them back at that center point. Okay, so it's just good to be aware of that. Again, with tags and any annotative element, if there's a similar one next to it, it's going to try and polar track with that. Okay, if I try and take the tag and move it outside of the room, outside of the bounds of the room, it's not going to read it anymore. So what I need to do with it, in order to get it so I can read it outside of the room, I need to make that tag have a leader line on it. So the leader line in this case, different than the annotative line, is going to be useful in so far, like think about life safety calculations, right? You have this big block of data, right? Occupancy load and all those things on it. Generally those are put off to the side of the plan, right? So we can see the plan, see the exit strategies, all those things. And then we bring that block of data out. So the only way to get that block of data outside of the room itself is to actually put a leader line onto it. So you'll see I have on the tag itself the ability to turn on a leader line. So once I turn on that leader line, then I can drag it outside of the room, then I can put my tag in there, right? Okay. I will leave that one out. Okay. Now let's talk about colors, right? So color fills. Right now I have a set of rooms. I have a set of data within the room. Let's talk about color fills. So to assign a color fill to this, right now, just like we did with the filtering, right? I did a Boolean toggle. Does this equal this? Right? I can also set up that same Boolean toggle for the color fill. So I'm doing colored plans, colored elevations, my colored sections. I can color the spaces based on that as well. What I'll do is I'll come in, and the first thing I'll always do for the initial plans, right? And projects that are already existing, I don't have to do this with. I'll always do the legend first. So the legend is an annotative element, and it's under color fill. So I click on color fill, and I bring in my legend.
Where do you go first?
It's under, cancel that. So it's under annotate, and then all the way at the right by where it says symbol, the one to the left is a little color fill legend.
Okay. Thank you.
And we're going to do this both ways, right? There, I can do that backwards and forwards. I like this way first because it's going to give me my dialog box and ask me what I want. I click on it, and it's going to say, do you want a space, or do you want a room? Or do you want an HVAC zone? In this case, we want rooms. But if I hold, spaces are good for one, exporting for daylighting analysis. So I can export out to like IES, Energy Plus, all those other DOE softwares that are available. Even Green Building Studio with Autodesk is going to be one you'll export out to. So spaces are key for calculating those types of scenarios. In our case, we're only doing it as a room schedule, right? All three of these exist, right, as the default nature of what a room actually is when I tag it. However, I'm only querying a specific set of data from that room. So I'll click on rooms, and then my color scheme. So by default, you can assign different color schemes ahead of time. Generally, Revit out of the box does not have anything assigned. It's going to give you a series of random colors based on whatever values you placed in that it's setting up the Boolean toggle on. In this case, we're going to do spaces with room name color scheme. So that's the one we'll select, SGA room name color scheme. and I'll click OK. And then it's going to color all of my objects. So who doesn't see a color? Everybody sees color?
We're in a good class.
Greg, do you have any idea what this is? You've frozen from a tutorial video that's been
Oh,
frozen onto the screen.
yeah.
Just restart.
No, close the window. Close this window completely.
All right, I'm back.
Cool. All right, so if you don't see the colors, right, they're part of the visibility graphics. So I can turn them on, I can leave the color scheme on, and then I still have control over them. Now typically you're gonna control it through the color scheme of the properties. However, I can toggle those on and off at will, right? So just where I have, just how I turned on the reference lines, I can also turn on and off the color fill. So in this case, I've turned off the color fill. I want to turn it back on, right? I'm going to come down to the rooms. I'm going to turn it back on. Click apply and click OK. Okay.
How come that's in modeling versus like a... Okay.
I have no idea. My thought is when they did it, they were thinking that it would be something able to be viewed in 3D space. So anything that's a model can be viewed in all series of spaces. However, that's not the case. So it could be that, hey, here's a future element that's going to be possible. But it's been like that for a long time. It's been like that ever since I can remember. So
They've got these room tags under annotate.
yeah, absolutely.
But then they also have them under architecture.
Yeah, and it used to be that even the color fill legend was part of the architecture tab, and there was nothing under annotate for rooms, right? So you'll see them kind of move things around, and they're notorious for that. Like the material editor in Revit changes every year, like the layout of it. So it's the same content, it's just a different way of displaying it. They can't make up their minds with it. So again, like there's 3 different places for everything. It's such a robust program that that's just the way it came out. And kind of, if I were a programmer on it, I would probably not be very happy because there's a lot of stuff in there. So okay, let's look at how those are reacting. So if I come in and I change a room name, right? So I have everyone by default is going to be named room, and it's going to start this kind of cryptic labeling system based on whatever SGA has set up for you. I'm going to click on room and the tag. So now what's going to happen is some of you are going to double click, right, on the tag, and it's going to open. I can't even get it to break now. There we go. Some of you are going to do this, and it's going to open up the tag. How many people had that happen? None? Okay, so if you ever get to this and you start seeing reference lines, this is the tag itself, right? So that tag is reading, this is just a textual label, right? A label of text. What's its room name, right? What's my area? All those things are things we'll get into once we understand schedules and how data is pushed and pulled. If you open it up like this, immediately, don't even load it into the project, just close it out. We don't want to touch that. We don't want.
It has to be created by developers, or is it
Revit out of the box will create a room tag for you. If they have a designated room tag. However, every office comes in and customizes. They have different room tags. There's no AIA, you have to have a room tag that looks like this, right? They have data that needs to be displayed on the room tag, but not, it has to be just like this. So we'll click no. But what I can do is if I'm careful enough, I can double click on where it says room, and I can type in something. So let's call this, what do we want to call it? Give me a name. Unit A. So this is Unit A. So the minute I change it, no matter if it's been designated with a color yet or not, it's going to give me a new color for every new name. So if I come down to this one and I call this one Unit B, it's going to give it a new color. And on this one, maybe I'm going to call it blah, blah, blah. So this one's blah, blah, blah. blah. It's still going to give me a new color for it, right? And then if I look at my color legend, so where did I place my color legend? I'll make my plans a little bit bigger here.
Is a legend something you control the visibility of?
No.
Annotation?
No. Legend lives on that specific view. You need to either delete it or not delete it. So I'll go to annotate. I'll do my color fill legend. Right, so there's my blah, blah, blah. I probably went and deleted it on accident. Right, and because it is an annotative, no, that's what happened. So if I move that outside of my crop region, I don't see it anymore. So I need to turn on my crop region. Make that visible, make sure I can see. Right, so you'll see that's an annotative element. Right, I'm still cropping my view, but I'm pulling out the annotative crop beyond where I had my legend. So it wasn't that I deleted the legend, it was more so that my annotative crop was on and I misplaced it, so it's outside of that annotation crop. Right, so and you'll see here, so I've already typed in, I didn't go to my room legend and start typing in values, right? The legend is driven by the room itself. So in this case, I'm going to call this Unit C. And you'll see that Unit C automatically populates into my color legend.
Is the crop region different for every sheet, every drawing? Or is it something you can just do?
No, and that was the idea of cropping to the scope box. So that way every single view is the same.
Right.
And then if I need to adjust it based on the view, I can adjust it. So in this case, we needed to adjust the annotation crop, right? So if you see my crop region, I've come in and I've actually pulled my annotation out so I can house that legend with the drawing. Oops. Now, by default, Revit gives you these, in my opinion, very kind of bland, really dull colors, right? Some other people may love this color scheme. I do not like this color scheme. So if I want to come in and change my color scheme, by default, when I selected that room legend and brought it in, it assigned a color scheme, what they call a color scheme, to my view. And to access that color scheme, I go to the properties of the view itself, and then under the graphics area of the view, right, so graphics is here, there's a color scheme line item. And I'm going to come into my SGA room name. It should say SGA room name, that's what we picked. And now I should see a set of colors. Now, I've seen offices predefine a bunch of names for you. In this case, SGA didn't do that. They said, well, the names are going to be different every time. We'll change the colors on the fly. Colors are going to be different every time, too. Some offices that are factory style, every project has to be the same colors. They'll predefine the colors. In our case, they're Pantone colors. Pantone colors more so because it's a CMYK value. It can be easily replicated on a printer and then color checked and color matched. So to access a Pantone color, I can come in and it's got its Pantone editor embedded. Or I can just pick a color, right? So maybe I want that one to be orange. This one I'm going to bring in to be blue. Right, so I can begin putting in my own colors, what I want, versus Revit's colors. I've already done orange, let's do red. So a really hot looking one, right? So that changes my colors back. If I undo, I'm fine. Right now I'm fine with the colors. That's how you change the colors. Now while we're in this dialog box, so some other things I can color by, right? So let me get it so I see my colors in my view. Under room name, bring that up. Kinda almost there. So I can't adjust that window. Some dialogues you can, some you can't. So I can give a title to my scheme. I can create new schemes. And then I can color by all the other items here. So let's say I wanted to color by area. Every room's going to have a different area, therefore I'm going to have a different color. So if I change, let's go ahead and create a new one. Let's make it by area. So I'm going to go by new. I'm going to do tutorial color area. And click OK. And then I'm going to color by, and instead of calling this title, title's going to be the one that goes into the legend. So right here I have room legend. This title is going to be area legend. Right? So this dialog box is going to drive both my legend and my color scheme. Apply. By apply, you'll see it changed to area legend. And then I'm going to color by area. And it's going to say colors are not preserved when changing which parameter is colored. And that's because these are associated with the name. Areas, I'm going to have a different area for every specific room. So that means it's going to color every one of my rooms a different color. I'll click OK. And there's all of my areas. So I'll click Apply and click OK. Aren't they? Thank you. I'm glad I'm not the only one that...
It's like zoning.
Yeah, it's like zoning colors. Exactly. Yep. Hey, it's contrast. I'm sure there's some mathematical formula that they're deriving a division of number, colors, value. So that's my area legend. If I wanted to do a different one, so maybe I want to see all rooms colored that have an occupancy. So how many rooms have the same occupancy? Right now we don't have rooms defining an occupancy, right? So I don't see anything. Maybe it's by floor finish. So where is that data stored? So you would think that, wait a minute, Craig, I have a concrete floor in my model. Why isn't it picking up that concrete floor finish? And that's because the room, even though it's there, it's not tracking what's below and what's above it, what's around it, and what's to the side of it. And even my wall. So if I said I want to do a wall finish with this, right? There is no wall finish defined. So defining that is by room to room to room. The room is a container of data, right? And I need to put data into that room container. So if I click OK, right, no colors defined because I don't have any wall finishes defined. So all of that other data is stored within the room properties itself. So let's go to Unit B here. So under Unit B, if I look, I'm selecting the reference lines for the room itself, and I'm scrolling down. You can see now these are predefined SGA toggles. What is my east wall? What's my south wall? What's my west wall? What's my wall base? What's my north wall finish? So those are custom ones. Out of the box ones are your occupancy, floor finish, wall finish, ceiling finish, base finish, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So if I wanted to do a wall finish, right, I can do PNT-1. So that's my wall finish for this particular room. If I click apply, because that's the only one that defines that wall finish, it's going to be the only one that has a color. Now wait a minute, it says, wait a minute, no colors are defined. Well, why aren't my colors defined in my legend? So I need to go back to my color scheme.
Sorry, Craig, is there edit type you use a tag
For what?
for wall finish?
No.
Just make it
So
specific.
to access the properties of the room, right? So the tag
Oh, it's the room.
is reading it. The room itself is by the reference lines, and then I can do wall finish. You can do either or. In this case, SGA provides you with what's my north wall finish, what's my south wall finish. So those are custom parameters that have been placed into the template. In this case, the wall finish on Revit says that they're assuming that your wall finish is the same for every room. So they're the vanilla box kind of, here you go, you know. In our case, it's just demonstrating the process behind this. We know from experience that, you know, I may have half my room concrete, half my room tile, right? But it's still the same room.
But is that, so does this, okay, Okay, so when you insert the data into these tags, does that generate a finish schedule, or do you generate the finish schedule and then you can load in per room what the finishes are? You start with a bank of materials or finishes. And then
Well, good question. I can make a room schedule, right? So a finish schedule is actually a room schedule.
Right.
I can make that ahead of time, but until I take the process of actually putting in the room with the tag through the room tool, I'm not going to see anything in my schedule.
So that drives the schedule. You can't say, okay, concrete, finished floor, and then you
No.
know that all the rooms are going to
Yeah,
have that, so you
and
go
it-
through and you just drop down.
Exactly. It's not like, yeah, because in CAD I would go to Excel and I'd say, well, I know from my program requirements I am going to have all these different rooms, and then within these rooms I'm already beginning planning this out, right? I'm going in Excel and I'm bringing that into CAD, and then I'm using that data to drive what I draw. And in Revit's sense, it's no, you're drawing first and then checking.
And generating schedule.
Yep, yeah. So it's like the tail wagging the dog,
All right.
right?
Yeah.
So kind of idea. Yeah. So since the idea of schedules came up, let's just finish and toggle why this is not picking up your colors. So I come into the project browser, or excuse me, properties of my view again, and I look at my color scheme, tutorial color scheme. I'm looking at it and I see paint 1 and paint 2, right? But I don't see the legend, right? So chances are, all I need to do, delete that legend off, bring in a new legend. It should pick that up. Right, so it's just a little glitch. So sometimes that is one glitch, one bug with Revit. I believe there's a service pack release that fixes that, or it should be. So just be aware of that. You'll have glitches like that. So whenever in doubt, just delete it and redo it again. Okay, so how do I now read this information? I'm going to select this back. I'm going to change this back. Let's take a look at all the other room sets that you have out of the box. So I have accessibility types. Is this ADA compliant or is this not ADA compliant? Is one that they're toggling for you. Occupancy type, spaces, black and white color, right? So you have color schemes already defined for you with names. So this is your basic kind of going out the door. Here's our spaces. So these, again, this was UFC, so you can see where these are coming from. So if you need a place to start with colors, here's your colors. Okay. Easter. Very Easter. They print better, that's why.
Yeah.
Okay, so for us, we just did it by room name. So just be aware of that. You know, life safety plans, same thing. It's going to be your occupancy type, you know, and dealing with those. You're not always going to define criteria like that, but they are available. So just be aware that they're there. You know, this one's being pulled by occupancy, right? If it says occupancy, double check that the color is by occupancy. We'll talk about by range and by value here when we get into area plans. Like my category right now, if I do spaces, right? So spaces is scheme 1. So I come to scheme 1 legend is fine. And what am I doing this by? So now when I go to spaces, I have an entirely new set of data, right? So this is a space plan. So I'm going to do it by name. And I don't have any spaces defined. So no colors are defined. So what about spaces, right? So that's going to be a whole different set of data, right? Even if I bring in a color fill legend, it doesn't matter, right? So spaces are something we'll need to touch on after we get through rooms and areas. So typically in an architecture office, unless you're exporting for daylighting, we'll be doing rooms. Okay, let's make a schedule now to view these rooms. I'm going to switch my schema back to rooms. Make sure it's room name, color scheme. I'm going to click apply and click OK. So there's one we set up. Drag my legend back in. Make sure I'm looking at that. Okay. This now, how do I read this data in a formulated tablet or table? I'm going to come into my project browser. Let's minimize all these. We're starting to get a lot of drawings for a little bitty project. Okay. Families will scroll. There we go. Clean that up a little bit. So I see now one legend, so this legend, right, I have all kinds of different legends. These are one-offs. These are not like this room legend. This is like if I have a landscape legend. It's just a 2D detail that I'm bringing in, right? If I open that up, 2D, annotative, doesn't belong to anything. That's a legend, just like it says. If I want to make a new schedule and quantity, that's what a room schedule is. I'm going to right-click on it. Now, things I can make out of schedules are going to be graphical columns, material takeoff, sheet lists is a one-off schedule. Revision clouds are another schedule that's completely separated from this as well. View list, so how many views do I have on my sheet, so on and so forth. Note blocks are there as well. In our case, most of the time it's either going to be a material takeoff or it's going to be a schedule and quantity. We'll click on new schedule and quantity. And then here's all the database things I can access within Revit. Right, so I have the ability to look at areas, gross building, accessibility, life safety, areas rentable. I have assemblies, casework, ceilings, columns, curtain panels, curtain system, curtain wall mullions, detail items, doors, electrical equipment, so on and so on and so on. So all those kind of same elements that we see as categories in visibility graphics and our family templates, I can now begin pulling quantities and information from them. So anything that exists within the properties of an element, I can see. Now in a quantifiable term. I'm going to come into rooms, I'm going to click on OK, and now we've defined for two of those rooms the wall finish, and we have an area, and we have a room name, and we have a room number. So what I can do, and we'll definitely get it, after we do area plans, we'll really talk a little more in depth about schedules, but I just want to get moving through showing you how I can do one through the other one through the other one. So I'm going to click on available field is going to be area. I'm going to add that. I'm also going to add the number of a specific room. How many do I have of that? What level does it appear on? What is its name? What is its name? You know, and in our case, we defined a wall finish for certain ones. So we're going to do that one as well, so we can see that data. And I can do all the other data if I want. So maybe I want to add some of these other ones in here, right? What's my perimeter? What's my occupant? What's my occupancy? They'll still schedule. You'll have an available field to put the data into. So let's go ahead and put in even floor finish, right? So once I have the name and I have that room established, being able to pump in data is a lot easier. So we'll go ahead and click OK. So there's my room.
Why does it not list the room names? Is that something we missed?
No, so in your case, do you have room name?
Yep. Some of them. I don't know. Maybe
That's okay. So now when I do a schedule and quantity, if I want to edit this schedule, so this schedule is treated like a view as well. If there's data missing, right, if I know that I'm missing something, chances are it's a parameter that you haven't defined as visible. Right, I'm not going to right click and say make something visible out of here. It's going to be under field. So within this, every one of these buttons is going to, embedded schedules, very nice. That's new.
What's that?
You can embed schedules, it appears. Nice. Very nice, very nice, very nice.
Embedded into.
So cool.
To what?
Into this. Nice. Anyway, we'll touch on that when we get into schedules.
Oh, there's the name.
Very, very nice. So I have my name. Will's missing name. So if I wanted to put in fields, I'm going to go to edit. And then within fields, right, I've already pushed name over there. So in the case of Will, he hasn't placed name from the available fields into the ones that are actually scheduled. So in my case, here's what Will is seeing. If I were Will, I would go into the fields, click on edit, click on name, and then click in add. So now something about organization within this, I can move them up and down. So in my case, I want name to always appear first. I'll come up to name. How many of that name do I have? So on and so forth, right? One room, blah, 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 blah. And where the count comes in is like if I'm taking this on level 4, but then I'm copying it all the way up and calling it typical, it'll give me a count of how many of those I actually have. So let's see some other ones. So I have some things happening here, right? So those 2 rooms that I had deleted, right, are called and termed not placed rooms. So even though I've deleted them out of that view where I placed them, they still exist in the model somewhere. They're not placed, but they're there. So what I need to do is actually select that room, and I should be able to highlight that field, and I should be able to delete that room. So right click, and I can delete that row. So by deleting that row, it will finally remove that selected room. And there's a good reason for why that is. Now, if you come and talk to somebody like me, and me and you are both doing program diagrams for a space, right? We're just doing layouts, right? The way I'm going to treat layouts and colored plans, traditionally in CAD, you would draw my boundary, click on hatch, put in a solid color, or draw my boundary, take it to Illustrator, put on a color. If you talk to me, I'm going to come in, and I'm going to go to my floor plan over here. Let's turn off our cropping boundary. So our crop boundary is driven by the scope box, so we'll turn that off. So I can draw off to the side on this. So if you talk to me, what I'm going to end up doing, ears peeling, excuse me, shouldn't have did that. Sorry.